Hello and welcome to season 1, episode 2 of Humor in Chaos. I am Sarah Howard Nelson. I'm a certified life coach and a certified art therapy practitioner. Even though I am not a therapist, I'm not a counselor, I'm not a psychologist, I am nothing licensed. I'm a certified life coach and art therapy practitioner. So, episode 2. And yes, if you're like, she's wearing the same clothes and hair. I did. I just recorded episode 1 and I'm immediately recording episode 2. And I will probably record other ones as well while I'm sitting here because today is a good day. So I want to get as much work done as I can, which reminds me, before anybody asks me what I'm doing, I am shutting off my phone so nobody contacts me. No, that's the camera. Shutting it off. Off. There we go. Okay. I don't want anybody bothering me while I'm doing this. And it'd be good if I could figure out how to edit that out. Hopefully I will, but if I can't, live with it. And one other note, I intend with this podcast to interview other people who've gone through rough stuff in their life. We're in chaos. So if you or anyone you know interview, shoot me an email, humorinchaos@gmail.com, or you can also contact me through my website, www.humorinchaos.com. Okay, so I want to talk about the first blog post I put into print the Searching for Joy section of my Humor and Chaos blog. So I want to talk about blog post number 1 is called Breakthrough Trees. And if you can tell, that's a tree growing out of stones and rocks. So this was taken in Southern California. I can't remember if my daughter took this in Santa Monica. I don't think so. I think it was closer to home. I want to say this is Santa Clarita. Anyway, when we lived there, we don't live there anymore. But the point of the Breakthrough Trees blog, and I'm not going to read the blog, you can go read the blog. It's online, it's in the book. Doesn't matter. You don't have to read it. This isn't one of those things where read it first and then I'll talk. No, you don't even have to read it if you don't want to. The point of it being that, and we weren't able to find the tree again, but I came up with the idea, and that tree was what started the Searching for Joy series in my Humor and Chaos blog post. Because she and I were walking in Santa Monica, and we didn't take a picture of that tree when we saw it, but we were in Santa Monica, and there was this huge tree that had grown on the edge of the sidewalk. And there was a bunch of trees kind of growing on the edge of the sidewalk along this boulevard in Santa Monica. And a lot of them do. But this particular tree had really busted through the concrete. And it just struck me. It really did. It struck me. And then when we went home, and I was having a tiny bit of a lupus flare at the time. And that night, I was awake at 4 o'clock in the morning and I could not sleep. I was just wide awake. And we lived in an apartment at the time that was surrounded by, tar and concrete. And in various spots in the parking lot to make it look, more homey, whatever, natural. The apartment complex that we lived in had, areas where the dirt's kind of broken up and they, put curbing around it and they plant a couple trees. And that's various spots throughout the apartment complex because there were multiple buildings in the complex that we lived in there. And so up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I'm looking out the window at the artificial light on these trees. I'm looking at these trees and they're doing okay. They weren't doing wonderful, but they were doing okay. They were pretty healthy for the time of year and growing. They had leaves. They had green leaves. I mean, it was 4 o'clock in the morning, but I could still tell. And heck, I'd been out there almost every day, looked out my window every day when I lived there. They were in good shape. The the workers of the apartment complex did a really good job of taking care of these trees. But then it got me thinking too, when we lived in Minnesota, me and my family, and we had this beautiful sugar maple tree in the front yard. And the rest of our property, because we lived out in the country, the rest of our property was surrounded by oaks and elms and birch trees and all kinds of trees that grew naturally. And my husband at the time, had also planted a small birch grove, which was a commemoration of a walk we had done through a birch grove years previous when we were dating. And I got to thinking about all of these trees. In particular, the one I had seen in Santa Monica busting through the concrete, and the one in my front yard in Minnesota. And both of those trees were extremely healthy. And both of those trees were deliberately planted by human hands. And one tree had everything it needed to grow constantly. It had perfect soil conditions. There was no concrete around the one in Minnesota, absolutely none. The soil was perfect and soft, so the roots could grow deep, and it got watered. There was an irrigation system in our yard, so it got water every day. We were not in a drought. And so that tree had everything that it needed. And it got fertilized once in a while. The tree in Santa Monica that busted through the concrete, even though the front yard had irrigation, you could tell it wasn't, you could tell from the stains on the sidewalk. The irrigation wasn't reaching the tree, although it probably had roots that dug its way underground to where the irrigation came in, if it could, because the ground there is harder. You know, people talk about how Southern California, you know, they don't get weather. In a way, that's true. They don't get weather. Minnesota gets weather. Southern California doesn't really get weather. However, when they do get rain, it takes very little rain to cause a flash flood because the ground is hard. It doesn't absorb very well. So this tree there, planted by human hands, has a harder time. And then on top of it, it had to bust through concrete, because I'm sure when it started, there was plenty of room for it when it was small. But having that concrete and it got bigger and bigger and bigger, it had to break through the concrete to keep growing. It had to bust it up. And as I said already, both trees are healthy and growing. You know, when I walked under the tree, it was beautiful shade. I didn't see any dead branches or anything. I mean, this tree really struck me. But notice the thing that, I mean, that tree had to be really old because it was huge. It was really big. And I don't, what kind of tree was it? You know, it couldn't have been that old because I bet it was a eucalyptus tree, and they grow pretty fast. So we'll take back that it was pretty old, but still it had to have been there for a while because it still had a really big trunk. But I noticed, or then it occurred to me that I didn't notice, I wasn't looking at it anymore. Couldn't find it again. Couldn't remember what street we were on. But I noticed that as the tree grew, nobody removed the sidewalk for it to grow. It broke the sidewalk and shoved it aside. And I didn't say it in the blog, but this harkens to the notion of, well, you know, the grass is always greener on the other side, which of course is using irony and a little bit of sarcasm, because it's to say the opposite, that people think the grass is greener on the other side, but it isn't. And I took it to the analogy of the trees because we always think other people have it easier. And that's not true. Even with everything I've been through, and I talk about my story, and people go, oh my God, you've had it so bad. And I have had it really bad. I'm not saying I haven't had it bad. It's been awful. A lot of people have had it really bad. A lot of people. The difference is I openly talk about my problems because I want other people to relate, and I can't stand, I'm just like everybody else. I can't stand it when other people are hurting. It makes me hurt. Hitting the microphone, don't do that. Other people hurt makes me hurt. When I hurt, my friends and family hurt. Most of the time when people come across hurt, they want to get it, they want to give somebody an easy fix. They want to fix it for them, or they want to tell them, well, if you do this, it'll be fine. And that's avoiding other people's pain because it makes you hurt, right? If I see you in your pain and your pain makes me hurt, I want to either fix you or get away from you so I don't hurt. And then we think, well, because you don't share your hurts, you don't hurt. So I hurt, but you don't hurt. And that's not true. Most people keep their hurts. They don't talk about them. They're ashamed of them, overwhelmed by them, in denial about them. Most times overwhelmed. Just trying to process them on their own. They've got, did I just have a little Minnesotan come out there? I think I did. They, you know, a lot of times it comes down to shame or pride of, I'll figure it out on my own. I just, you know, look at what's around you. Go outside and go for walks. And I know I'll hear from, or I won't, maybe I will. I hear from people sometimes, or when I read stuff, you know, associated with autoimmune chronic diseases, and people will say, exercise doesn't help. It does help. Exercise does help, not in the sense that it will cure what you're dealing with, but it will help you deal with it better mentally. If you get outside and just do a slow walk, if that's all you can muster. And I say this from experience, when I started finally being able to get out of bed after my back surgery, I literally could only walk out the front door and past the neighbor's house. That's how far I could go. And then I would turn around and make my way back and sleep for hours. That's how I started. And 2 years later, I was walking 6 miles a day. What am I doing today? I'm back down to just, I'm in a different apartment building, and now I'm back to the point of being able to go downstairs to get my mail and maybe go around the building. And so I'm having to rework up to more walking. So I know how hard it is to get out and exercise. I know how exhausting it is and how much it hurts when your disease is active. I live it. But it is still good to get out. It's good to even just look out the window and notice that it's not just human beings. I'm looking out the window right now and there's rocks across the street. And what's coming through the rocks are patches of green grass that are not meant to be there. So they're punching through the rocks. And that was the point of the breakthrough trees, is you know, find a way to grow. How many people have seen a tree grow on a hill, and you know, the hill's like this, and then the tree comes out and then it kind of curves up. You know, if you haven't seen it in real life, you'll see it in pictures. Take a lesson from that. Take a lesson from people who have overcome. People that have found a way to grow despite themselves. And I'm not talking about inspiration porn. I'm not talking about that. I am so opposed to inspiration porn. And I know a lot of people are gonna be like, what's inspiration porn? I don't know what that is. It's when somebody who has a disability or handicap or some kind of physical issue, and they've found a way to say, you know, like somebody who wears prosthetic legs and they run a marathon. And that's wonderful. And that can be incredibly inspiring. It becomes inspiration porn when others put it in front of you in a direct or indirect way, in person or online or wherever, and say, look, if they can do it, you can do it. Even if they don't say that, they just imply that. That's inspiration. Because what that person accomplished, yay, let's be happy for them and celebrate and be excited. That doesn't mean anybody else with the same issue or different issues, or even what appear to be less severe issues, can do that or even strive for that. You know, it's about judging what one person can do and making that the standard for other people. It's not fair. It's just wrong and it's unfair. However, it is good for those of us, regardless of what you're dealing with, if it's a physical thing or if it's an emotional thing or a mental thing, it's good to just pay attention to what's around you and you take lessons. It's not okay for other people to point it out to you and say, this is what you should go for. No, but it is good to look around and go, okay, what can I do? And then just take baby steps. And this is the other thing too, is measuring. Okay, that tree that broke apart that sidewalk took a long, long time to do that. A really long time. And there shouldn't be any time stamp to somebody growing and healing. It's also, it's not fair. That's ableism, part of ableism. Ableism is another thing where people who are abled, it's just, it's not good. Ableism is not good, and I don't want to get into that on this. I don't want to get into it on this because it's not, I'm talking about, I want people who are dealing with stuff looking inward and just asking themselves, what can I do? And if it's not physical, if it's mental or emotional, overcoming, if it's a fear of something, I'm not talking about a full-on phobia. I am not licensed to handle phobias. Go to a therapist or a psychologist for a phobia, but I am talking about oh my God, I have to go deal with this. I have to talk to this person. I have to make this phone call I don't want to make. Okay, what can I do? What can I do to build myself up internally so I can do that? That's what I'm talking about. Tiny steps, the tiniest of steps, even if it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, whatever. Baby steps are still baby steps. They're still steps forward, and they add up over time. And in my situation where I was at my utmost crushed, this is when I was literally hiding under my desk on the phone with my life coach. I couldn't I could not get myself out the door. I couldn't figure out how to get my bills paid because my ex had been in control of the finances entirely, and he had me password locked out, and he would not take my calls so I could ask, how can I get in? How can I can't get in to pay the electric bill. I can't get in to pay the water bill. What's going on with the rent payments? I don't know. And he was expecting me, to trust him. And it just, I had no concept of autonomy in making decisions. And thank God for my life coach who literally worked with me. And I'm not joking. The analogy was my spine, of getting on the floor, looking for my spine and putting it back into my back, one vertebrae at a time. And now I'm in complete control of my life, and live on my own and full autonomy, and living a great life now. But it took me years. So that's what I want to say about breakthrough trees, the first blog in the series. And just look around you and look for what inspires you at your level to make even just the tiniest movement in your life. And then I'm also going to say this, and I'll talk more about it in a different episode, because I know some of you will groan. But journal it. Why do I want you to journal it? Because at times when you feel like you haven't made any progress, you go back and look at your journals and you're gonna see that you grew. But I'll talk more about journaling at another time. So anyway, all right. Keep trying to smile. I don't want to get ahead of myself for future talks, but yeah, there's a lot to be grateful for. There's a lot to strive for, even if it's just tiny things. You know, we're not here to be stagnant. We're here to evolve as people, as individuals, and as a society. So anyway, as I like to say, if you know of anybody to interview, shoot me an email, humorinchaos@gmail.com. Check out the website, www.humorinchaos.com. I am Sarah Hauer Nelson, and we'll talk again. Bye-bye.